Peter William Sutcliffe, born the 2nd of June 1946, also known as Peter William Coonan, is a prolific English serial killer who is dubbed the Yorkshire Ripper by the press. On the 22nd of May 1981, Sutcliffe was convicted of murdering 13 women and attempting to murder 7 others. He is serving 20 concurrent sentences of life imprisonment, which was increased to a whole life order in 2010. All except 2 of his murders took place in West Yorkshire, the others were in Manchester. Sutcliffe initially attacked women and girls in residential areas, but appeared to have moved to red light districts because he was attracted by the vulnerability of prostitutes. Sutcliffe had allegedly regularly used the services of prostitutes in Leeds and Bradford. He carried out murders over 5 years, including women who were not prostitutes. After his arrest in Sheffield by South Yorkshire Police for driving with false number plates in January 1981, he was transferred to West Yorkshire Police, who questioned him about the killings. He confessed to being the perpetrator, saying that the voice of God had sent him on a mission to kill prostitutes. At his trial, Sutcliffe pleaded not guilty to murder on grounds of diminished responsibility, but he was convicted of murder on a majority verdict. Following his conviction, Sutcliffe began using his mother's maiden name of Coonan. West Yorkshire Police were criticized for their failure to catch Sutcliffe despite having interviewed him 9 times in the course of their 5-year investigation. Because of the sensational nature of the case, the police handled an exceptional amount of information, some of it misleading, including the Wearside Jack hoax recorded message and letters purporting to be from the Ripper. Following Sutcliffe's conviction, the government ordered a review of the investigation, conducted by Lawrence Byford, known as the Byford Report. The findings were made fully public in 2006 and confirmed the validity of the criticism against the force. The report led to changes to investigative procedures which were adopted across UK police forces. In 2019, The Guardian described the manhunt as stunningly mishandled. Sutcliffe was transferred from prison to a high-security psychiatric hospital in March 1984 after being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The High Court dismissed an appeal by Sutcliffe in 2010, confirming that he would serve a whole life order and never be released from custody. In August 2016, it was ruled that Sutcliffe was mentally fit to be returned to prison, and he was transferred that month to HM Prison Frankland in Durham. Early life. Sutcliffe was born in Bingley in the West Riding of Yorkshire to a working-class family. He was given a Catholic upbringing by his parents, John William Sutcliffe, and his wife Kathleen Frances, née Coonan. Reportedly a loner, he left school age 15 and had a series of menial jobs, including 2 stints as a gravedigger in the 1960s. Between November 1971 and April 1973, Sutcliffe worked at the Baird television factory on a packaging line. He left this position when he was asked to go on the road as a salesman. After leaving Baird Television, Sutcliffe worked night shifts at the Britannia Works of Anderton International from April 1973. In February 1975, he took redundancy and used half of the £400 payoff to train as a heavy goods vehicle (HGV) driver. On the 5th of March 1976, he was dismissed for the theft of used tires. He was unemployed until October 1976, when he found a job as an HGV driver for T.W.H. Clark Holdings Limited on the Canal Road Industrial Estate in Bradford. Sutcliffe, by some reports, used prostitutes as a young man, and it has been speculated that he had a bad experience, during which he was conned out of money. Other analyses of his actions have not found evidence that he actually sought their services, although he clearly expressed unusual behavior before the killings. Sutcliffe met Sonia Surma on the 14th of February 1967. They married on the 10th of August 1974. She suffered several miscarriages and they were informed that she would not be able to have children. She resumed a teacher training course, during which time she had an affair with an ice cream van driver. When she completed the course in 1977 and began teaching, she and Sutcliffe used her salary to buy a house in Heaton, Bradford, into which they moved on the 26th of September 1977, and where they were living at the time of Sutcliffe's arrest. Through his childhood and his early adolescence, Sutcliffe showed no signs of abnormality. Later, in part related to his occupation as a gravedigger, he developed a macabre sense of humor. In his late adolescence, he developed a growing obsession with voyeurism and spent much time spying on prostitutes and the men seeking their services. Attacks and murders. 1969 Sutcliffe assaulted a prostitute he had met while searching for a woman who had tricked him out of money. He left his friend Trevor Birdsall's minivan and walked up St. Paul's Road in Bradford until he was out of sight. When he returned, he was out of breath, as if he had been running. He told Birdsall to drive off quickly. Sutcliffe said he had followed a prostitute into a garage and hit her over the head with a stone and a sock. According to his statement, Sutcliffe said, "I got out of the car, went across the road and hit her. The force of the impact tore the toe off the sock and whatever was in it came out. I went back to the car and got in it." Police visited his home the next day, as the woman he had attacked had noted Birdsall's vehicle registration plate. Sutcliffe admitted he had hit her, but claimed it was with his hand. The police told him he was very lucky, as the woman did not want anything more to do with the incident. She was a known prostitute, and her husband was serving a jail term for assault. 1975 Sutcliffe committed his second assault on the night of the 5th of July 1975 in Kelly. He attacked Anna Rogalski, who was walking alone, striking her unconscious with a ball-peen hammer and slashing her stomach with a knife. Disturbed by a neighbor, he left without killing her. Rogalski survived after extensive medical intervention but was psychologically traumatized by the attack. Sutcliffe attacked Olive Smelt in Halifax in August. Employing the same modus operandi, he struck her from behind and used a knife to slash her, this time above her buttocks. Again he was interrupted, and left his victim badly injured but alive. Like Rogalski, Smelt suffered from emotional and mental health problems, including clinical depression. On the 27th of August, Sutcliffe attacked 14-year-old Tracy Brown in Silsden. He struck her from behind and hit her on the head 5 times while she was walking along a country lane. He ran off when he saw the lights of a passing car, leaving his victim requiring brain surgery. Sutcliffe was not convicted of the attack, but confessed to it in 1992. The first victim to lose her life in a Sutcliffe attack was Wilma McCann on the 30th of October. McCann, from Scott Hall in Leeds, was the mother of 4. Sutcliffe struck her twice with a hammer before stabbing her 15 times in the neck, chest and abdomen. An extensive inquiry, involving 150 police officers and 11,000 interviews, failed to find the culprit. One of McCann's daughters died by suicide in December 2007, reportedly after suffering years of depression over her mother's death. 1976 Sutcliffe committed his next murder in Leeds in January 1976, when he stabbed 42-year-old Emily Jackson 52 times. In dire financial straits, Jackson had been using the family van to exchange sexual favors for money. Sutcliffe picked up Jackson, who was soliciting outside the Gaiety pub on Roundhay Road, then drove about half a mile to some derelict buildings on Enfield Terrace in the Manor Industrial Estate. Sutcliffe hit her on the head with a hammer, and then dragged her body into a rubbish-strewn yard and used a sharpened screwdriver to stab her in the neck, chest and abdomen. Sutcliffe stomped on her thigh, leaving behind an impression of his boot. Sutcliffe attacked 20-year-old Marcella Claxton in Roundhay Park, Leeds, on the 9th of May. Walking home from a party, she accepted an offer of a lift from Sutcliffe. When she got out of the car to urinate, Sutcliffe hit her from behind with a hammer. She was left alive and testified against Sutcliffe at his trial. At the time of this attack, Claxton had been 4 months pregnant, and subsequently suffered a miscarriage. 1977. On the 5th of February, Sutcliffe attacked Irene Richardson, a Chapeltown sex worker, in Roundhay Park. Richardson was bludgeoned to death with a hammer. Once she was dead, he mutilated her corpse with a knife. Tire tracks left near the murder scene resulted in a long list of possible suspect vehicles. 2 months later, on the 23rd of April, Sutcliffe killed Patricia Tina Atkinson, a sex worker from Bradford, in her flat, where police found a boot print on the bedclothes. 2 months later, on the 26th of June, he murdered 16-year-old Jane MacDonald in Chapeltown. She was not a sex worker and, in the public perception, showed that all women were potential victims. Sutcliffe seriously assaulted Maureen Long in Bradford in July. He was interrupted and fled, leaving her for dead. A witness misidentified the make of his car, resulting in more than 300 police officers checking thousands of cars, without success. On the 1st of October 1977, Sutcliffe murdered Jean Jordan, a sex worker from Manchester. In a confession, Sutcliffe said he had realized a new £5 note he had given her was traceable. After hosting a family party at his new home, he returned to the wasteland behind Manchester Southern Cemetery, where he had left the body, to retrieve the note. Unable to find it, he mutilated Jordan's corpse and moved it. On the 9th of October, Jordan's body was discovered by local dairy worker and future actor Bruce Jones, who had an allotment on land adjoining the site where the body was found and was searching for house bricks when he made the discovery. The £5 note, hidden in a secret compartment in Jordan's handbag, was traced to branches of the Midland Bank in Shipley and Bingley. Police analysis of bank operations allowed them to narrow their field of inquiry to 8,000 employees who could have received it in their wage packet. Over 3 months the police interviewed 5,000 men, including Sutcliffe. The police found that the alibi given for Sutcliffe's whereabouts was credible. He had indeed spent much of the evening of the killing at a family party. Weeks of intense investigations pertaining to the origins of the £5 note led to nothing, leaving police officers frustrated that they collected an important clue, but had been unable to trace the actual firm, or employee within the firm, to which the note had been issued. On the 14th of December, Sutcliffe attacked Marilyn Moore, another sex worker from Leeds. She survived and provided police with a description of her attacker. Tire tracks found at the scene matched those from an earlier attack. 1978. The police discontinued the search for the person who received the £5 note in January 1978. Although Sutcliffe was interviewed about it, he was not investigated further. He was contacted and disregarded by the Ripper Squad on several further occasions. That month, Sutcliffe killed again. His victim was Yvonne Pearson, a 21-year-old prostitute from Bradford. He repeatedly bludgeoned her about the head with a ball-peen hammer, then jumped on her chest before stuffing horsehair into her mouth from a discarded sofa under which he hid her body near Lum Lane. Her body was not found until the 26th of March. 10 days later, he killed Helen Ritka, an 18-year-old sex worker from Huddersfield. He struck Ritka on the head 5 times as she exited his vehicle, before stripping most of the clothes from her body, although her bra and polo neck jumper were positioned above her breasts, before repeatedly stabbing her in the chest. Her body was found 3 days later beneath railway arches in Garrett's timber yard to which he had driven her. On the 16th of May, Sutcliffe killed Vera Millward in an attack in the car park of Manchester Royal Infirmary. 1979. On the 4th of April 1979, Sutcliffe killed Josephine Whittaker, a 19-year-old building society clerk whom he attacked on Savile Park Moor in Halifax as she was walking home. Despite forensic evidence, police efforts were diverted for several months following receipt of a taped message purporting to be from the murderer taunting Assistant Chief Constable George Oldfield, who was leading the investigation. The tape contained a man's voice saying, "I'm Jack. I see you're having no luck catching me. I have the greatest respect for you, George. But Lord, you're no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started." Based on the recorded message, police began searching for a man with a Wearside accent, which linguists narrowed down to the Castletown area of Sunderland. The hoaxer, dubbed Wearside Jack, sent 2 letters to police and the Daily Mirror in March 1978 boasting of his crimes. The letters, signed Jack the Ripper, claimed responsibility for the murder of 26-year-old Joan Harrison in Preston in November 1975. At the time, police mistakenly believed that the Preston murder was not public knowledge. The hoaxer case was reopened in 2005, and DNA taken from envelopes was entered into the national database. On the 20th of October 2005, John Samuel Humble, an unemployed alcoholic and longtime resident of the Ford estate in Sunderland, a few miles from Castletown, was charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice for sending the hoax letters and tape. Humble, whose DNA had been taken following a drunk and disorderly offense in 2001, was remanded in custody and on the 21st of March 2006 was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison. Humble died on the 30th of July 2019, aged 63. On the 1st of September, Sutcliffe murdered 20-year-old Barbara Leach, a Bradford University student. Her body was dumped at the rear of 13 Ashgrove under a pile of bricks, close to the university and her lodgings. It was his 16th attack. The murder of a woman who was not a sex worker again alarmed the public and prompted an expensive publicity campaign emphasizing the Wearside connection. Despite the false lead, Sutcliffe was interviewed on at least 2 other occasions in 1979. Despite matching several forensic clues and being on the list of 300 names in connection with the £5 note, he was not strongly suspected. Sutcliffe was interviewed by police 9 times. 1980 In April 1980, Sutcliffe was arrested for drunk driving. While awaiting trial, he killed 2 more women. He murdered 47-year-old Marguerite Walls on the night of the 20th of August, and 20-year-old Jacqueline Hill, a student at Leeds University, on the night of the 17th of November. Hill's body was found in the grounds of the Luckton residences. He also attacked 3 other women, who survived. Afadi Bandara in Leeds on the 24th of September. Maureen Lee, known as Mo, an art student attacked in the grounds of Leeds University on the 25th of October, and 16-year-old Teresa Sykes, attacked in Huddersfield on the night of the 5th of November. On the 25th of November, Trevor Birdsall, an associate of Sutcliffe, reported him to the police as a suspect, but the information vanished into the paperwork already accumulated. Arrest and trial. On the 2nd of January 1981, Sutcliffe was stopped by the police with 24-year-old prostitute Olivia Rivers in the driveway of Light Trade's house in Melbourne Avenue, Broomhill, Sheffield. A police check by probationary constable Robert Hydes revealed his car had false number plates and Sutcliffe was arrested and transferred to Dewsbury Police Station. At Dewsbury he was questioned in relation to the Yorkshire Ripper case as he matched many of the known physical characteristics. The next day police returned to the scene of the arrest and discovered the knife, hammer and rope he had discarded when he briefly slipped away from the police after telling them he was bursting for a pee. Sutcliffe hid a second knife in the toilet cistern at the police station when he was permitted to use the toilet. The police obtained a search warrant for his home at 6 Garden Lane in Heaton, Bradford and brought his wife in for questioning. When Sutcliffe was stripped at the police station, he was wearing an inverted V-neck sweater under his trousers. The sleeves had been pulled over his legs and the V-neck exposed his genital area. The front of the elbows were padded to protect his knees as, presumably, he knelt over his victims' corpses. The sexual implications of this outfit were considered obvious, but it was not made public until the 2003 publication of the book, Wicked Beyond Belief, The Hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper, by Michael Bilton. After 2 days of intensive questioning, on the afternoon of the 4th of January 1981 Sutcliffe suddenly declared he was the Ripper. Over the next day, Sutcliffe calmly described his many attacks. Weeks later he claimed God had told him to murder the women. He displayed emotion only when talking of his youngest victim, Jane MacDonald, and when questioned about the murder of Joan Harrison, he vehemently denied responsibility. Harrison's murder had been linked to the Ripper killings by the Wareside Jack claimed, but in 2011, DNA evidence revealed the crime had actually been committed by convicted sex offender Christopher Smith, who had died in 2008. Sutcliffe was charged on the 5th of January. At his trial, he pleaded not guilty to 13 charges of murder, but guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The basis of his defense was that he claimed to be the tool of God's will. Sutcliffe said he had heard voices that ordered him to kill prostitutes while working as a gravedigger. He said the voices originated from the headstone of a Polish man, Bronislaw Zapolski, and that the voices were that of God. He pleaded guilty to 7 charges of attempted murder. The prosecution intended to accept Sutcliffe's plea after 4 psychiatrists diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, but the trial judge, Justice Sir Leslie Boreham, demanded an unusually detailed explanation of the prosecution reasoning. After a 2-hour representation by the Attorney General Sir Michael Havers, a 90-minute lunch break and another 40 minutes of legal discussion, the judge rejected the diminished responsibility plea and the expert testimonies of the psychiatrists, insisting that the case should be dealt with by a jury. The trial proper was set to commence on the 5th of May, 1981. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and despite the efforts of his counsel James Chadwin QC, Sutcliffe was found guilty of murder on all counts and was sentenced to 20 concurrent sentences of life imprisonment. The jury rejected the evidence of 4 psychiatrists that Sutcliffe had paranoid schizophrenia, possibly influenced by the evidence of a prison officer who heard him say to his wife that if he convinced people he was mad then he might get 10 years in a loony bin. The trial judge said Sutcliffe was beyond redemption, and hoped he would never leave prison. He recommended a minimum term of 30 years to be served before parole could be considered, meaning Sutcliffe would have been unlikely to be freed until at least 2011. On the 16th of July 2010, the High Court issued Sutcliffe with a whole life tariff, meaning he is unlikely ever to be released. The whole life tariff was introduced by the government in 1983, and it was reported that Sutcliffe was among only a small group of prisoners to have been issued with a whole life tariff. Politicians were stripped of their powers to set minimum terms for life-sentenced prisoners in November 2002, and the final say on how long a life-sentenced prisoner can serve has since rested with the High Court. After his trial, Sutcliffe admitted to other attacks. It was decided that prosecution for these offenses was not in the public interest. West Yorkshire Police made it clear that the victims wished to remain anonymous. Criticism of West Yorkshire Police. West Yorkshire Police were criticized for being inadequately prepared for an investigation on this scale. It was one of the largest investigations by a British police force and predated the use of computers. Information on suspects was stored on handwritten index cards. Aside from difficulties in storing and accessing the paperwork, the floor of the incident room was reinforced to cope with the weight of the paper. It was difficult for officers to overcome the information overload of such a large manual system. Sutcliffe was interviewed 9 times, but all information the police had about the case was stored in paper form, making cross-referencing difficult, compounded by television appeals for information which generated thousands more documents. The 1982 Byford report into the investigation concluded, the ineffectiveness of the major incident room was a serious handicap to the Ripper investigation. While it should have been the effective nerve center of the whole police operation, the backlog of unprocessed information resulted in the failure to connect vital pieces of related information. This serious fault in the central index system allowed Peter Sutcliffe to continually slip through the net. Assistant Chief Constable George Oldfield was criticized for being too focused on a hoax confessional tape that seemed to indicate a perpetrator with a Wareside background, and for ignoring advice from survivors of Sutcliffe's attacks. and several eminent specialists including the FBI, plus dialect analysts such as Stanley Ellis and Jack Windsor Lewis, whom he had also consulted throughout the manhunt, that Wareside Jack was a blatant hoaxer. The investigation used it as a point of elimination rather than a line of inquiry and allowed Sutcliffe to avoid scrutiny, as he did not fit the profile of the sender of the tape or letters. The Wareside Jack hoaxer was given unusual credibility when analysis of saliva on the envelopes he sent showed he had the same blood group as the Yorkshire Ripper had left at crime scenes, a type shared by only 6% of the population. The hoaxer appeared to know details of the murders which had not been released to the press, but which in fact he had acquired from his local newspaper and pub gossip. The official response to the criticisms led to the implementation of the forerunner of the Home Office Large Major Inquiry System, the development of the Major Incident Computer Application (MICA), developed between West Yorkshire Police and ISIS Computer Services. In response to the police reaction to the murders, the Leeds revolutionary feminist group organized a number of Reclaim the Night marches. The group and other feminists had criticized the police for victim blaming, especially the suggestion that women should remain indoors at night. 11 marches in various towns across the United Kingdom took place on the night of the 12th of November 1977. They made the point that women should be able to walk anywhere without restriction and that they should not be blamed for men's violence. In 1988, the mother of Sutcliffe's last victim, Jacqueline Hill, during action for damages on behalf of her daughter's estate, argued in the High Court that the police had failed to use reasonable care in apprehending the murderer of her daughter in Hill v. Chief Constable of West Yorkshire. The House of Lords held that the Chief Constable of West Yorkshire did not owe a duty of care to the victim due to the lack of proximity and therefore failing on the second limb of the Caparo test. Byford report. The Inspector of Constabulary Sir Lawrence Byford's 1981 report of an official inquiry into the Ripper case was not released by the Home Office until the 1st of June 2006. The sections, Description of Suspects, Photo Fits and Other Assaults and parts of the section on Sutcliffe's immediate associates were not disclosed by the Home Office. Referring to the period between 1969, when Sutcliffe first came to the attention of police, and 1975, the year of the murder of Wilma McCann, the report states, "There is a curious and unexplained lull in Sutcliffe's criminal activities and it is my firm conclusion that between 1969 and 1980 Sutcliffe was probably responsible for many attacks on unaccompanied women, which he has not yet admitted, not only in the West Yorkshire and Manchester areas but also in other parts of the country." In 1969 Sutcliffe, described in the Byford report as an otherwise unremarkable young man, came to the notice of police on 2 occasions over incidents with prostitutes. Later that year, in September, he was also arrested in Bradford's red light district for being in possession of a hammer, an offensive weapon, but he was charged with going equipped for stealing as it was assumed he was a potential burglar. The report said that it was clear he had on at least one occasion attacked a Bradford sex worker with a COSH. Byford's report states, "We feel it is highly improbable that the crimes in respect of which Sutcliffe has been charged and convicted are the only ones attributable to him. This feeling is reinforced by examining the details of a number of assaults on women since 1969 which, in some ways, clearly fall into the established pattern of Sutcliffe's overall modus operandi. I hasten to add that I feel sure that the senior police officers in the areas concerned are also mindful of this possibility, but, in order to ensure full account is taken of all the information available, I have arranged for an effective liaison to take place." Police identified a number of attacks which matched Sutcliffe's modus operandi and tried to question the killer, but he was never charged with other crimes. The Byford report's major findings were contained in a summary published by the Home Secretary, William Whitelaw, the first time precise details of the bungled police investigation had been disclosed. Sir Lawrence described delays in following up vital tip-offs from Trevor Birdsall, an associate of Sutcliffe since 1966. On the 25th of November 1980, Birdsall sent an anonymous letter to police, the text of which ran as follows. I have good reason to now seek the man you are looking for in the Ripper case. This man has sick dealings with prostitutes and always had a thing about them. His name and address is Peter Sutcliffe, 5 Sick Garden Lane, Heaton, Bradford. Clark Sick Trans. Shipley. This letter was marked, Priority No. 1. An index card was created on the basis of the letter, and a policewoman found Sutcliffe already had 3 existing index cards in the records. But, for some inexplicable reason, said the Byford report, the papers remained in a filing tray in the incident room until the murderer's arrest on the 2nd of January the following year. Birdsall visited Bradford Police Station the day after sending the letter to repeat his misgivings about Sutcliffe. He added that he was with Sutcliffe when he got out of a car to pursue a woman with whom he had had a barroom dispute in Halifax on the 16th of August 1975. This was the date and place of the olive smelt attack. A report compiled on the visit was lost, despite a comprehensive search which took place after Sutcliffe's arrest, according to the report. Byford said, the failure to take advantage of Birdsall's anonymous letter and his visit to the police station was yet again a stark illustration of the progressive decline in the overall efficiency of the major incident room. It resulted in Sutcliffe being at liberty for more than a month when he might conceivably have been in custody. Thankfully, there is no reason to think he committed any further murderous assaults within that period. Custody. Prison in Broadmoor Hospital. Following his conviction and incarceration, Sutcliffe chose to use the name Coonan, his mother's maiden name. He began his sentence at HMP Parkhurst on the 22nd of May 1981. Despite being found sane at his trial, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Attempts to send him to a secure psychiatric unit were blocked. While at Parkhurst, he was seriously assaulted by James Costello, a 35-year-old career criminal with several convictions for violence. On the 10th of January 1983, he followed Sutcliffe into the recess of F2, the hospital wing at Parkhurst Prison, and plunged a broken coffee jar twice into the left side of Sutcliffe's face, creating 4 wounds requiring 30 stitches. In March 1984, Sutcliffe was sent to Broadmoor Hospital, under Section 47 of the Mental Health Act, 1983. His wife obtained a separation from him in 1982 and a divorce in April 1994. On the 23rd of February 1996, Sutcliffe was attacked in his room in Broadmoor Hospital's Henley ward. Paul Wilson, a convicted robber, asked to borrow a videotape before attempting to strangle him with the cable from a pair of stereo headphones. 2 other convicted murderers, Kenneth Erskine and Jamie Devitt, intervened on hearing screams. After an attack with a pen by fellow inmate Ian Kay on the 10th of March 1997, Sutcliffe lost the vision in his left eye, and his right eye was severely damaged. Kay admitted trying to kill Sutcliffe, and was ordered to be detained in a secure mental hospital without limit of time. In 2003, it was reported that Sutcliffe had developed diabetes. Sutcliffe's father died in 2004 and was cremated. On the 17th of January 2005, Sutcliffe was allowed to visit Grange-over-Sands, where the ashes had been scattered. The decision to allow the temporary release was initiated by David Blunkett and ratified by Charles Clark when he became Home Secretary. Sutcliffe was accompanied by 4 members of the hospital staff. Despite the passage of 25 years since the Ripper murders, Sutcliffe's visit was the focus of front-page tabloid headlines. On the 22nd of December 2007, Sutcliffe was attacked by fellow inmate Patrick Sureda, who lunged at him with a metal cutlery knife while shouting, "You fucking raping, murdering bastard, I'll blind your fucking other one." Sutcliffe flung himself backwards and the blade missed his right eye, stabbing him in the cheek. On the 17th of February 2009, it was reported that Sutcliffe was fit to leave Broadmoor. On the 23rd of March 2010, the Secretary of State for Justice, Jack Straw, was questioned by Julie Kirkbride, Conservative MP for Bromsgrove, in the House of Commons, seeking reassurance for a constituent, a victim of Sutcliffe, that he would remain in prison. Straw responded that whilst the matter of Sutcliffe's release was a parole board matter, that all the evidence that I have seen on this case, and it's a great deal, suggests to me that there are no circumstances in which this man will be released. In 2019, Sutcliffe told other prisoners one of his testicles was 5 times its normal size following treatment for a bladder infection. Subsequently, a cancer scan was carried out with Sutcliffe then calling the National Health Service useless for not giving him the results of his cancer scan immediately. Appeal on application by Sutcliffe for a minimum term to be set, offering the possibility of parole after that date if it is thought safe to release him, was heard by the High Court of Justice on the 16th of July 2010. The High Court decided that Sutcliffe will never be released. Mr. Justice Midding stated, "This was a campaign of murder which terrorized the population of a large part of Yorkshire for several years. The only explanation for it, on the jury's verdict, was anger, hatred and obsession. Apart from a terrorist outrage, it is difficult to conceive of circumstances in which one man could account for so many victims." Psychological reports describing his mental state were taken into consideration, as was the severity of his crimes. Barring judicial decisions to the contrary, Sutcliffe will spend the rest of his life in custody. On the 4th of August 2010, a spokeswoman for the Judicial Communications Office confirmed that Sutcliffe had initiated an appeal against the decision. The hearing for Sutcliffe's appeal against the ruling began on the 30th of November 2010 at the Court of Appeal. It was rejected on the 14th of January 2011. On the 9th of March 2011, the Court of Appeal rejected Sutcliffe's application for leave to appeal to the Supreme Court. In December 2015, Sutcliffe was assessed as being no longer mentally ill. In August 2016, a medical tribunal ruled that he no longer required clinical treatment for his mental condition, and could be returned to prison. Sutcliffe is reported to have been transferred from Broadmoor to Franklin Prison in Durham in August 2016. Legacy. On the 26th of August 2016, the police investigation was the subject of BBC Radio 4's The Reunion. Sue McGregor discussed the investigation with John Dunale, who later became Assistant Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police. Andy Laptew, who was a junior detective who interviewed Sutcliffe. Elaine Benson, who worked in the incident room and interviewed suspects. David Zackerson, who investigated the Wearside Jack tape and letters in Sunderland, and Krista Ackroyd, a local journalist in Halifax. In 2017, West Yorkshire Police launched Operation Paintball to determine if Sutcliffe was guilty of unsolved crimes dating back to 1964. This inquiry also looked at the killings of 2 sex workers in southern Sweden in 1980. As Sutcliffe was a lorry driver, it was theorized that he had been in Denmark and Sweden, making use of the ferry across the Øresund Strait. West Yorkshire Police later stated that they were absolutely certain that Sutcliffe had never been in Sweden. Media. This is personal. The Hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper, a British television crime drama miniseries, first shown on ITV from the 26th of January to the 2nd of February 2000, is a dramatization of the real-life investigation into the murders, showing the effect that it had on the health and career of Assistant Chief Constable George Oldfield, Alan Armstrong. The series also starred Richard Ridings and James Lawrenson as DSI Dick Holland and Chief Constable Ronald Gregory, respectively. Although broadcast over 2 weeks, 2 episodes were shown consecutively each week. The series was nominated for the British Academy Television Award for Best Drama Serial at the 2001 Awards. The series was released on DVD on the 7th of January 2013. A 3-part series of 1-hour episodes, The Yorkshire Ripper Files, a very British crime story, aired on BBC 4 in March 2019. This included interviews with some of the victims, their family, police and journalists who covered the case by filmmaker Liza Williams. In the series she questions whether the attitude of both the police and society towards women prevented Sutcliffe from being caught sooner. A play written by Olivia Hurst and David Byrne, The Incident Room, premiered at Pleasance as part of the 2019 Edinburgh Festival Fringe. The play focuses on the police force hunting the Yorkshire Ripper. The play was produced by New Diorama. See also: Notes. References. Bibliography. Bilton, Michael, 2003. Wicked Beyond Belief: The Hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper. HarperCollins UK. ISBN 9780007169634. Byrne, Gordon, 1993. Somebody's Husband, Somebody's Son: The Story of Peter Sutcliffe. Mandarin. ISBN 0-7493-1331-5. Cross, Roger, 1981. Yorkshire Ripper. HarperCollins UK. ISBN 978-0586055267. Juve, Nicole Ward, 1986. The Street Cleaner: The Yorkshire Ripper Case on Trial. Marion Boyars. ISBN 978-0714528472. Jones, Barbara, 1993. Voices from an Evil God. Blake Publishing. ISBN 1-8578-2065-7. McCann, Richard, 2005. Just a Boy: The True Story of a Stolen Childhood. Atbury Press. ISBN 9780091898229. Nicholson, Michael, 1980. The Yorkshire Ripper. Star. ISBN 0-3523-0616-5. Smith, Joan, 1993. Misogynies. Faber and Faber. ISBN 0-571-16807-8. Final chapter: There's Only One Yorkshire Ripper. External links: Sir Lawrence Byford's report, December 1981. Multiple files: Yorkshire Ripper website suggestion that Sutcliffe had other victims. BBC News. Google Earth Maps overlay showing significant locations in the Ripper case. Case file. True Crime Podcast. Case 37. The Yorkshire Ripper, Parts 1, 2, 3, 22, the 29th of October, the 5th of November 2016.